So today we are doing a wicked interview with Juvan. So Juvan is someone who I met this week actually. I've been following his content for a while. It's really cool. He does some really cool workshops around the world. He's been to Australia a couple of times, worked with a bunch of different businesses that are really interesting. He coaches one-to-one and he does a lot of group-based stuff as well, and he's just a really talented human who is genuinely here to leave a legacy and to attack this topic of masculinity and to attack this challenge that society faces around dysfunctional men, to steal his words. It's something that he really believes in. It's something that I really believe in. And when we had a coffee last week, it was something that really hit me pretty hard, and I realized that we really needed to do something with him on this particular topic. So let's get into it.
I believe that some of the world's greatest challenges are the direct result of dysfunctional men. And men are dysfunctional because they're at war within themselves, and they don't have a safe space to be able to congregate and to communicate the things that are heaviest on their hearts. And consequently, we suffer in silence. And we make challenges for our families, for our communities, and for the world. And I believe that I'm here to create content, community, and conversations that support, facilitate healing for those men, so they can learn to love, live, and lead from the heart.
So, how cool's this?
It's good to see you, brother.
It's good to see you too.
All right, from Instagram to Insta conversation.
Coffee to camera conversations. One of the things that really hit me when we caught up for coffee at the start of this week was your thoughts around masculinity and how it's sort of decaying a lot of conversations in society.
For sure.
And I kind of wanted to dig a little deeper into where that stems from your perspective and from your coaching and that sort of realm.
Of course. I wish I could say there was one root to it all, because we all have different experiences, but if I can give some container or context before we even dive in, I think we've all been through different events and experiences in our lives, right? We've all had them. There are marriages, there are divorces, there are single moms, there's single dads. Everyone's dynamics are different. But based on those events and experiences, what happens is we create a story, right? So my dad died when I was 3. I don't know who I am. My mother struggled with drugs. I don't want to be an alcoholic or a drug addict either. So we create these stories, right? And these stories fall into one or two categories. They're either empowered or they're disempowered stories. The disempowering stories, it leads to shame or guilt. And the empowering stories leads to choice and ultimately to results. And so it's really learning how to tell stories and whether they support you and serve the people in your life. And I think the reason why a lot of men are struggling and really dysfunctional are because they don't have a space where they can change the story. We don't know how to change the story, so it's so much easier to be in the dark and to hide out and to suffer in silence than it is to be able to communicate things and be vulnerable and authentic, because then they control my narrative when I'm vulnerable. And so it's really challenging for men. So. And
I think that's interesting too when you think about the context of the story you tell yourself. You end up, when you run down that road and that's the story that you tell everyone and you project out, there's like the peripheral vision that's not seen when you look narrow, and then there's the outside of it all that you're leaving behind.
Absolutely.
And you're like neglecting those areas of your life. And you're focusing so heavily on this narrative, I don't want to become an alcoholic because that's my past, that's where I've come from. And then you end up becoming everything else that's negative other than that one thing. And you're focusing so hard on that. And I think you're right. I think story is such a big thing.
For sure.
And I think if you pull it back to that, it's a big challenge.
Yeah.
It's a big challenge.
A mentor of mine told me, he said, we're foolish during the strongest years of our life, and we're wisest during the weakest years. And I think about that, and I think that's why I, in this time in my life, move with so much urgency and work on really being in excellence when I'm coaching, or I have my online business leadership academy, or I'm doing a workshop in London or in Australia. I'm really focused on doing so in excellence and with urgency, because I understand that men are hurting. Men are really hurting, and they're not only hurting themselves, they're hurting the communities, they're hurting our families, they're hurting the office space. These guys are Fortune 500 companies, they're in politics, they're in the community events and nonprofit organizations. They're leading organizations. Men lead, and if they're not leading from a disempowered place, it affects the entirety of the organization, of the family, of the unit. So
I think it's a huge challenge. And I think the next step is how do you make a cultural shift in society to then push people away from opening up that peripheral vision, so to speak, and opening up the dialogue around the story that they're constantly telling themselves. Like, what's the step around that? Is that a one-to-one coach? Like, how does somebody who sort of feels like this is a problem for them, and maybe they are thinking a little bit too narrow. How do they open up that thinking?
Absolutely. Number one is community. Community is so important. And then, the statistics say 85% of men over the age of 25 cannot identify a best friend, someone who they can confide in and be able to share what's heaviest in their heart. That's damn near everybody. 85%, that's almost every man. It's almost every man. It's ridiculous and it's sad, but if men find themselves in a community, they'll realize a few things. One, that they're not alone. Two, that you have what I have. I grew up in a household with different dynamics, but we have the same thing. Ultimately, the story is the same. And three, that this can change. I don't have to stay here. The thing about pain is that it demands to be felt. You can't hide from pain. You can't hide from pain. Pain will always find its way to the surface. And so it's not that we want to get over this. We want this to go away. It's learning how to manage it, how to maintain the pain, the shame, the guilt, and not get over it, but to live above it, and not allow it to control the depth or the direction or the distance you go in life.
And there was a metaphor you threw out the other day that has sort of stuck with me since, and I've stolen it.
It's all yours. It's yours.
And it was the homelessness inside. Do you want to talk to that a little bit?
Absolutely. My philosophy is I believe that the world's greatest challenges are the result of dysfunctional men. And men are dysfunctional because their story, it becomes a war. And the more you tell a story, the more it's no longer a story. It's actually truth. And we as people operate from what's true to us. And so a lot of men are operating from that pain, and that pain that's building up within them, it actually lives, it's stored, it's housed in what's called the emotional body. And it becomes very dark. We have a physical body, and then we have an emotional body. And because there's so many stories that live within this, scars and wounds, it becomes a homeless place. And if you think about it like this, if you're at home, and we're kicking it, we're hanging out, right, with my mate, and the game's on, and I say, where do you want to watch the game? You want to go to the bar? You want to go to your house? I'm offering everywhere except for mine because chances are great my house is probably a mess and I'm embarrassed by it. Or we go to the game, we go to the Dodgers game, and we go to the Lakers game, and it's like, do you want to drive? I'll give you gas. Why? Because my car's a mess. It's dirty inside, or I'm not proud of my car. Our bodies are the same way. When we're not proud of who we are, and we're not happy at home, this thing called my body, my space, we don't invite people in. And because men are at war, we're not allowing people in. We're not engaging. We're not connecting. And we're suffering consequently because we thrive off of love, off of connection, off of being present with someone, right? As kids, we crave two things. We all crave two things: to be heard and to be seen. And whatever brings that to us, we follow it. And a lot of boys, they don't feel heard and seen in the home, and so they spend the entirety of their life searching in relationships and friendships, in the workspace, in the community, in line at Starbucks, at the concert. And sometimes when we don't find it, we go to places that we wouldn't normally go. Drugs, alcohol, sexcapade, from one situation to the next, to places that are not us. And we become not ourselves, and we begin attracting not our people, and not our experiences, and not our money, and it becomes a downward spiral. It's a slope.
It's crazy. It's it's literally stuck with me, that metaphor. It's really been something that sort of lived in me for the last couple of weeks, and made me reevaluate some of the areas of my life that I think sort of need addressing.
Absolutely.
And I think it's wicked, but I think the other thing that I think is worth touching on is, we do have quite a few females in the audience, and I think while a lot of this does stem from sort of the challenges masculinity has, but how can a female who can see this in their partner or their son or their grandson or whatever the case may be, how can they sort of encourage that or sort of open their eyes to something that may need to be fixed?
I think that the answer, the very foundation, first of all, great question. The very foundation is that men and women communicate differently. Emotionally, spiritually, physically. What women do externally, men do internally, right? If a woman and a man are in an argument or a disagreement, he's sitting on the couch and he's playing video games or watching the game, and she thinks he gives less than a good shit about what she's saying. But he's processing. He's trying to determine, how do I approach this without being emotional, but still being the man. There's being a man, and then there's being good at being a man. And most men get caught up, how can I be a good man in this moment? What does this moment require of me? And so what women can do, just in an effort to support men, is to listen generously. A lot of men are not effective communicators. because we're not in tune with ourselves. We don't know ourselves. It's not wrong or bad, but just historically, we're not the most effective communicators. We take action, we serve, we protect. It's about action. Women feel, right? They receive, they're the recipients. And so men don't have that natural curve. A lot of men who are raised like myself by women have a little bit of that. And so I've been able to use that, right? And so you get that. But there are a lot of men who haven't, and it can be destructive in a relationship. And so for women who are watching this content and are wondering, what can I do to support, my son, or support my husband, or my partner, or my brother, or my dad, is to listen generously. And to do so means being a safe space. Most men don't feel safe. It's not that they don't want to share. Not that they don't know how to share. It's that they don't feel safe enough to share, to go there. And so when you listen to them and you make it about them, and you can focus out and ask questions, take a Socratic approach and ask powerful questions, and just listen. Don't try to fix him. Don't try to change him. Don't try to empower or encourage. Just listen. Men don't feel heard or seen generally, and so they keep it to themselves.
One of the other things, I was at a comedy show the other night, and another cool metaphor was thrown out there, and it was about this whole women create a new score at the end of every day when it comes to men. So they close their eyes, they wake up in the morning, and they've completely forgotten the positives things that they did the other night. And guys add scores. It's like just a cultural thing. Guys constantly think, I did that, and then you end up in this battle where he goes, well, I did this the other night, and she goes, well, you shouldn't be counting that sort of stuff. So it ends up in this war of sort of attrition, so to speak. And I think that's another big challenge I think a lot of relationships face, is this this counting, this sort of, I did this and you did that, and we need to find a way to be even. And in being even, you're actually running in an adverse direction. So I was just popped into my head when you said that. But I think this has been wicked.
One of the most challenging things, I think, is to learn how to love without keeping score. And we only keep score on others because we're also doing that to ourselves. And I think one of the greatest choices that I've made in my life is to love myself, because that I can now extend that out to someone else, whether it's a friend, whether it's a business partner, whether it's family or a partner. You can extend that. But I think the greatest journey I've also been on is really developing a relationship with me. And it's hard to build relationships with other people when you don't first have one with yourself. Most people wake up in the morning and they spend the whole day with themselves. They wash themselves, they brush their teeth, they feed themselves, and they're uncomfortable
in that environment
within themselves. And so if you're not happy here, and you don't appreciate you, and you're not interesting to you, why would someone else be interesting? So. And
I think that's something I hear a lot, and I think it might be worth you diving in a little bit more into how you can actually do that, because I think it's something that I think YouTube is scattered with the sort of theoretical approach to things, and I think the practical approach is something that's missing, especially for guys who sort of need like what's the 1, 2, 3 step process to and I don't want to put you on the spot and just sort of throw something out that needs that 1, 2, 3 step, but is there anything actionable that you think guys can do today that can help them sort of love themselves a little more?
For sure. Again, there's no one-stop formula for it. But one thing that comes to mind immediately as you're saying that is, one thing that I did is, I wear this wedding band on my hand, right? It's on my right hand. I don't know if you guys can see it in the camera. I'm not married. I'm single, and I'm, just so you know, put it in the comments below now. But I wore this band. I bought this about 2.5 years ago. And I bought it, I was walking actually by the Grove, we're not that far from there right now. And I had a relationship that was on the top of my mind. I was really thinking about it. I was like, I'm making money now, and like my business is growing, I'm learning a lot, and I'm in a good space. I'm not worried about certain things anymore. I think I have room. I'm actually feel ready. This is the first time I felt ready for a relationship. And I thought, would I date me? And I had to stop and I had to ask myself, would I date me? And I thought, what is it about me that I may not like about me if I was dating me? And it was a really powerful. I was standing at the Grove. I remember this. I was standing at the Grove, and I thought, man, I'm not always consistent as I would like to be. Working out, sometimes with my word, breaking my own word with myself. But overall, I was like, yeah, I would. I was like, why don't I just go do that? And I walked by and I saw a Michael Kors store, and I was like, I walked in there, and the lady said, would you like to look at our rings or watches? And I was like, yeah, I would. And I saw the ring, and short of the long, I bought the ring, and I put it on my finger, and I smiled, and I said, you know what? I'm going to date me. I'm going to take some time and really date myself. And so for that week, and since that, every week I date myself. I take myself on a date. And the days of my week go Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, not Tuesday, but Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. And this is funny, but this is what I would suggest to guys and some of my clients. I say date yourself, and every Tuesday, I take myself out. I go out, get a manicure, pedicure, or I go out and get a massage, or I go to the gym, or I go get a workout with some of my boys, or I plan a dinner with friends. I do something where I can be with me.
Yeah.
I'm a big beach guy. I love the water, and I spend a lot of time at the beach, but I spend a lot of time with me. And I know what I like emotionally, spiritually, sexually, physically, on all fronts. I understand me, and I'm interesting to me. I laugh at myself in the car. Like, this sounds super corny, but I've spent a lot of time with myself. And the interesting thing is, my relationship with myself has now extended to that of my network, and even the level of relationships I'm attracting into my life has shifted because I know myself that much better. Does that make sense?
Totally, and it's cool because I think that's something you can think about even if you're in a relationship.
For sure.
You know, if you're in a relationship and you sort of look at yourself and go, well, is she getting the bad end of the stick, or is he getting the right? Where are you at with that? And I think that's a really cool thing to think about and just sort of internalize and start to attack. If you do walk out the house on your own and then go straight to your phone and find someone to hang with, maybe you should look at, like, that's probably sign number one, that you need to sort of address something internally, because if you do find being alone uncomfortable and you don't enjoy that company, as you said, that's a really dangerous place to line to be walking.
Absolutely. If you don't know how to be alone, you only know how to be lonely.
Yeah.
And that's been a huge gift for me as a man, and I think I've built this courage and this strength to be able to approach other men and connect with them, because, to be quite honest with you, 5 years ago I would never be able to look you in the eye.
Totally.
I would be intimidated by you. I'd be in my own head about who you are and what you represented, and I would do whatever it took to sabotage connecting with you. But now I know who I am. I'm happy. I'm excited. I'm elated to be able to share my gifts and my story with you, because I'm now sharing it in a way that's empowered.
And it allows you to step up. Like, when you feel comfortable in your own skin, it allows you to step up to the next level of social status, whatever that means to you, or whatever that means to your world. You know, it allows you to step up and have those conversations without sort of feeling overplayed or, you know, undervalued, or like you don't have anything to give. Because I think if you enjoy yourself, you're way more comfortable sharing yourself with other people.
For sure. What would you say is one of the challenges that you've come up against just in manhood for yourself? What would you say?
I played a lot of sport, so being tough was something that was big, and that's an Australian thing. You know, rugby's our national sport, and if you're not tough, you're not
one of the guys.
It's like you cut to the side, and that starts to run into relationships with females too, because you start to adopt that hard-hitting approach to life, animalistic approach to life, and that primal approach to life, and then you bring that into relationships, and you bring that into all sorts. And when I say bring into relationships, I don't mean the physical component, but the sort of visceral approach to conversations. It's like, if you don't want to hear, if someone doesn't want to, if you don't want to hear what someone has to say, you walk away.
For sure.
And you're not willing to have that conversation. And it took a long time to challenge myself on that, and to really sort of find my own definition of masculinity, and my own definition of what being a man is. And what I'm just so pumped about, and what really struck a chord with me when we hung out, was and actually 3 other people who I've hung with here have done the same thing, or trying to do the same thing, which is create a conversation around masculinity, and trying to create that conversation around masculinity at the beginning, before those bad habits aren't formed, and before that sort of need to be accepted in male settings. And I think that's just awesome. I think that the fact that more people are feeling that, and I think the fact that the people that are educating that have their own experiences with feeling it
100%
is powerful. And it's tough to hear that from women sometimes.
It is. You know, it's something I do want to point out and really make a point here is, on the surface, it seems to be the conversation is masculinity, but in my experience, below the surface, it's not so much masculine, feminine, it's more identity. It's that we don't know who we are. When you don't know who you are, you don't know how to show up in a relationship or in a room. And that's perhaps the greatest challenge. So it's really brand identity, like, who am I?
That is such a big question, because I really struggled with that. I think we had the same struggle when we both stopped playing basketball. That was the identity, and then I went into advertising, and that was my identity. But I think the more you change your identity, the better you are at doing it, and the easier you think it is. And then it allows you to slowly shift that identity away from your job or away from what you're good at, and towards who you are and what you want to project. And I think the closer your personal brand is to an outcome that benefits others, you end up in a much better place yourself. 100%. And I think that's the goal.
Absolutely.
I think that we should all be chasing. But this has been wicked, man.
Yeah, you as well, champ.
Good stuff.
It's good to see an Australian in America doing this work, because I spent a lot of time in Australia as well, right? And I done workshops and trainings out there in Perth and Melbourne, Brisbane, Sydney, and the term that came up was tall poppy syndrome. I'm sure you're familiar with that, which is a big thing, which is almost the inverse of what happens in America. We get nice cars, we want to show everybody and flaunt, but you guys take your cars out at night when no one's watching, because you don't want anybody to think that you're better or bigger, which again is the mindset, right? It's the mentality, and I think if we can change our thoughts, we can change our life. So, because
in Australia, you've got this issue with you are your social circle. So if you end up growing above that social circle or out of that social circle, they'll grab at you and claw their way to pulling you back down again. like nowhere else in the world.
It's intense.
And I think the fact that you're spending time in Australia, and there's some coaches in Australia that are really, really strong and trying to do some stuff. There's Addicted to Success, I think, is one.
Yeah, it's one of my brothers, Joe Brown.
So he's a killer too, and I think there's a lot of people in Australia who can help with that sort of stuff as well.
For sure.
And I think coming from Australia, it gives you an extra level of understanding around that particular problem.
For sure. Joel's doing some really great work in Australia. He's currently in Sydney, and what I really admire about Joel is he's gone from like being, this phenomenal businessman who was super transactional to diving deeper into spirituality component, understanding God, and also bringing people closer to themselves ultimately. And I think that's the gift here. I think that's what my legacy will be, is really redefining what it means to be a man in this world. If I can just do that, I've done my justice. And if I just do it with one, I've done my justice. And so I'm not in a rush, and I'm not trying to fill the stadiums with hundreds of thousands of people. I'm doing one-on-one, I'm doing intimate gatherings to really support people, to really get to the core of who they are, which is their heart. So I'm excited to be a part of this conversation. I'm happy to be on this.
That
was be here, brother.
That's killer.
Appreciate you, brother.
Love it, man. It's awesome. So there's so much to take away from that conversation, and I think there's so much power in the chat that we just had then, and I think the tips and tricks and the ways to change any sort of feelings that you've got around struggling to grasp your masculinity, or if you know anyone who is struggling with their masculinity or struggling with how to be a man, I think there's a lot of tips in there that you can take away. And I'm really happy we did that chat, and I think it was a really, really profound conversation, and it was fun. It was wicked fun for us as well. So really hope you like it. If you do want to check out more of what Juvan has to say, his YouTube channel is wicked. He drops videos weekly, and there's way more on there than just masculinity. There's a lot of stuff that he covers that can help people of all walks of life. So I really, really recommend checking that out. And that was a great chat, and I'm really, really glad we had it. So I hope you guys enjoyed it. Subscribe below, and we'll see you soon.